Everyone thinks they understand Gandalf, but hidden beneath Gandalf's grey robes is a truth the movies barely touch. He's stranger and far more powerful than he ever allows anyone to see. Once you learn who he really is, every scene he's in starts to feel completely different.
Mabanor, the dark fire will not avail you. Flame of Udun!
If you've only watched the movies, you probably think Gandalf is just a mysterious old wizard with a staff and a grey robe. But there's more to what meets the eye. Throughout the story, the elves don't actually call him Gandalf. They call him Mithrandir, which translates to Grey Pilgrim. At first that sounds like a respectful nickname for a wandering wizard, but in Tolkien's world, names carry meaning, and this one is surprisingly literal.
My lady, Smaug owes allegiance to no one.
But if he should side with the enemy,
A dragon could be used to terrible effect.
To the elves he looks like a hooded traveller who always appears right when trouble is brewing, so they give him a name that reflects exactly what they see, a wandering figure guiding events from the edges.
Mithrandir.
What makes this even more interesting is that Mithrandir isn't his real name either. In fact, almost every culture in Middle-earth invents its own label for him. Men call him Gandalf, thinking he's some kind of grand elf with a magical staff. Dwarves are less poetic and, let's say, more practical. They give names based on what stands out most. In this case, that would be the staff. So they call him Tharkun, which literally means staff man.
the ring is altogether evil.
The truth is that Gandalf's hidden identity extends beyond simply using different names. In fact, he's not even human. So what is his true name, and where does he come from? Before he ever walked through Middle-earth, he was known as Olorin, and we'll explain more about this next.
It's about knowing not when to take a life, but when to spare one.
If you look at Gandalf on screen, it's very easy to assume he's just an old man who happens to know magic. Nothing about him seems inhumane, but Tolkien's deeper lore reveals that Gandalf is something far stranger and far more powerful than a human wizard.
You shall not pass!
Gandalf actually belongs to a race of spiritual beings known as the Ainur. These entities existed long before the physical world was ever created. In Tolkien's mythology, they existed before the world was created and played a role in shaping it. But Gandalf isn't one of the greatest among them. He's part of a lesser, yet still incredibly powerful group called the Maiar, spirits who serve the higher Ainur, known as the Valar. So in the biggest possible sense, Gandalf isn't just ancient. He is a being who existed before history, before kingdoms, and even before the stars first shone over Middle-earth. What's even more interesting is that he isn't the only one. The main villain, Sauron, is also one of these same original spirits. The difference is the path they chose. While Sauron fell into darkness and domination, Gandalf was sent to Middle-earth with a very specific purpose: to help its people resist evil.
Saruman believes that it is only great power that can hold evil in check. But that is not what I have found.
But there was a catch. Gandalf and the other wizards were placed into the bodies of older men on purpose. They were not allowed to appear in their true, overwhelming form. They weren't meant to rule armies or force people to obey them. Their job was to guide, encourage, and inspire, not to take control. When you understand this, Gandalf stops feeling like a quirky magician and starts feeling more like a restrained guardian watching over a fragile world. But even with all that ancient power and divine purpose, the people of Middle-earth sometimes see him as a warning. When Gandalf rides into the kingdom of Rohan, he isn't welcomed like a hero. Instead, King Theoden greets him with a cold and suspicious title, Stormcrow.
Should I welcome you, Gandalf Stormcrow?
A just question.
This nickname isn't random. In Tolkien's world, it carries a deeper meaning. In Middle-earth, birds like crows and ravens are often seen as signs that trouble is coming. When flocks suddenly take flight or gather in strange numbers, people assume a storm or war isn't far behind. From Theoden's point of view, Gandalf seems to work the same way. He shows up right before disaster hits.
in which this conjurer chooses to appear. Last spell I name it. Ill news is an ill guest.
And that is true because everywhere he goes, peace is already cracking, and his presence feels like confirmation that the worst is about to happen. There's also another layer to this tension. Theoden's mind has slowly been poisoned by the manipulations of Saruman and his servant Grima Wormtongue. This makes Gandalf seem even more suspicious and threatening.
You have no power here.
Understanding the Stormcrow label changes how you see Gandalf. He isn't unlucky, he's simply the one brave enough to arrive when everyone else would rather look away. And if his reputation as a bringer of bad news makes him feel ancient and weary, that's because, in many ways, he truly is. His long beard, slow movements, and deep knowledge make it seem like he's simply lived a very long human life. But when you ask how old he really is, the question becomes surprisingly complicated because Gandalf has two very different ages.
A wizard is never late. Frodo Baggins.
But there's also a more practical way to look at it. Gandalf and the other wizards arrive in Middle-earth around the year 1000 of the Third Age. The War of the Ring doesn't happen until about the year 3018. That means Gandalf has spent nearly 2,000 years walking the lands of Middle-earth in the same form. He has watched kingdoms rise, fall, and be forgotten while he continues moving forward with the same quiet mission. The most dramatic change in Gandalf's journey comes after his battle with the Balrog. He returns in shining white robes, carrying a completely new sense of authority, and that transformation means something much deeper.
Go back to the shadow.
The Wizards of Middle-earth are known as the Istari, Gandalf being one of them, and each is associated with a colour that reflects their role. The leader of their order was originally Saruman. When Saruman betrays his mission and seeks power for himself, that leadership role is left empty at the very moment the world is sliding towards war. After Gandalf sacrifices his life defeating the Balrog, he's sent back by a higher power. He returns as Gandalf the White, effectively taking on the rank and responsibility that Saruman abandoned.
Who are you? Show yourself!
This isn't simply about becoming stronger, it's about being trusted with greater authority during the most dangerous phase of the conflict. You can feel this change in the way others react to it. Kings listen more carefully, enemies hesitate, even Saruman is forced to face the consequences when Gandalf breaks his staff, symbolically ending the old order. Understanding this transformation changes how the entire arc feels. Gandalf rises because he was willing to give everything for his mission. In Tolkien's world, true power is earned through sacrifice. When you put all of this together, Gandalf becomes a hidden spiritual being, a guide bound by strict limits, a witness to centuries of history, and a leader who only steps fully into authority after proving his humility and courage. And that's what makes his story so powerful.